Almost. Major. Holy fucking shit, this is major!
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Almost Major, where we talk about the many major studios and the films they released. Today we're on our fourth film of our 1980s New Line Cinema miniseries. My name is Kevin Tudor. I'm here with Charlie Nash.
Hello.
And Bryden Doyle.
Hello.
And our super special returning guest, it is Mary Beth McAndrews. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm so excited to talk about this movie. It's an all-timer for me, so I'm ready.
Hell yeah. And that movie is Phenomena from 1985. Could not find any box office on this whatsoever. I'm sorry. I even went to the landfill that is Box Office Mojo, and it was like, did you mean the 2013 movie Philomena with Judi Dench? I was like, no.
Saw that in theaters.
I did see that in theaters. Yeah.
But the budget was $3.8 million. This was released January 31st, 1985 in Italy, and August 2nd, 1985 in the United States under the title Creepers. Top 5 films that weekend: Back to the Future, National Lampoon's European Vacation, Fright Night, Weird Science, and The Black Cauldron.
Huh.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of an interesting weekend.
I used to be able to, like, Gurgi I was obsessed with as a kid.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Gurgi basically has the same voice as Meatwad from Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
He does. You know what? You're fucking right. Didn't think about that, but you're right. Oh.
Number one song in the U.S. this week is Shout by Tears for Fears. And speaking of Back to the Future, The Power of Love by Huey Lewis and the News was number one for 2 weeks after the song left the number one, and that's just two bangers right there. But number one in Canada, Every Time You Go Away by Paul Young. A better song, You Spin Me Round by Dead or Alive, was number one a week after, and that's a 10 out of 10 song. Plot description from Google. An American, played by Jennifer Connelly, at a Swiss finishing school calls on insects to help a paralyzed scientist, Donald Pleasance, fight a monster. Okay.
Yeah, that's it. That's that good shit.
Written by Dario Argento and Franco Ferrini. Ferrini is one of, like, legitimately, like, 19 writers on Once Upon a Time in America from 1984. He's also a writer on Demons and Demons 2. Demons is incredible, and I need to watch the second one. Also wrote a little movie called Sleepless in 2001, which we covered with Mary Beth in our Artisan miniseries. You think about that often, don't you?
Yeah.
Just one of your favorite Argentos.
Yeah. Definitely didn't forget that we did that.
Remember that? Yeah.
Oh, I remember Strangeland. Well, that one I remember.
There you go. Directed by Dario Argento. Prior to this, The Bird and the Crystal Plumage. Brian, you caught up with this?
I did. Love the score on that one. The Ennio Morricone score, where it's just like, you know, kind of like the falsetto sort of like sing-songy voices with like the sort of like folky acoustic guitar, and then like it will be like this very erratic sort of like jazzy music. Yeah, and really like the editing in that one too. Like, you know, that's like one where like sometimes the editing in this movie is I'm like sort of like, what? Well, this cut seems to be coming a little bit too early, but I kind of like the abruptness of it and everything. It's like sort of like the domesticity and like the horrible murders are kind of like bleeding into one another. I felt like that was like an interesting bit of intentionality. Yeah.
And you also saw Inferno, which I wasn't able to catch up with.
Yes, I really liked that one. That was one that benefited from watching it at like 2:00 in the morning when I was like kind of like on the verge of falling asleep, because like that movie just like, I don't think really follows the rules of a proper movie. Wild to see the 20th Century Fox logo in front of it. I cannot.
None of his movies make any sense, and that's what you have to do going into his movie.
Yeah, I mean, yes. Like an hour into that movie, like there's like a big fire, and I'm like, part of my brain was like for like a second thinking like, there's no fire alarms. And I thought like, why am I asking that question in the middle of this movie? And I was like, never mind, doesn't matter. But like and also like I love like just the way it looks. Like, oh my gosh, just like casually beautiful frames and everything. Like the bit when like I think it's Daria Nicolodi talking to the main guy who's, you know, just whatever. But like there she's like explaining like her life and everything, and like it's just like sort of an ordinarily lit scene, and then like it'll like cut like 2 cuts later, it's like there's like this blue light like coming in. I'm just like, oh, we're like in a complete dream world now and everything. Like it's so cool. Yeah, no, I loved it, and the score too is incredible. The music that's playing when the girl's like reading the letter in the taxi is like this like prog rock riff, and it's like I was like, I'm in, love it.
What else we got? Deep Red in 1975, the greatest movie of all time, Suspiria in 1977, Inferno in 1980, Tenebrae in 1982. After this, Opera in 1987, The Stendhal Syndrome in 1996. I really want to watch this. Has
Me
anybody
too.
seen that?
No, I haven't seen that. No, I haven't seen it. I don't think I've seen
Yeah.
any of his. Well, I hadn't until I saw Sleepless, but I hadn't seen any of his, like...
Did you see Sleepless? Are you sure?
No, honestly,
I can't be too sure.
I can't
Yeah.
be too sure. I might have.
Yeah. I remember the clarinet getting the clarinet murder or whatever instrument that was. That's the main thing I remember from that movie.
I think there's some fun sequences in that one. I feel like I did stick up for that one enough. When I
The first like 20 minutes is like kicks ass, which I mean you can say that about pretty much every Argento movie. It's just he knows how to start a movie.
one question I have is since we talked about that, since we talked about Sleepless, his new movie came out, Dark Glasses, and I don't know if anyone caught up with that. I caught up with it, and I thought that was pretty interesting actually. But yeah, I like that one.
We don't talk enough about how Argento just straight up made a movie called Giallo in 2009.
Yeah.
That's like De Palma making a movie called Hitchcock, and Dark Glasses in 2022, which we just talked about. Starring Jennifer Connelly as Jennifer Corvina. Prior to this, this is basically her first movie, although she does have a very small part in the aforementioned Once Upon a Time in America a year prior. After this, Labyrinth in 86, The Hotspot in 1990, Career Opportunities in 1991, Higher Learning in 1995. I need to watch that. I've heard that's a lot. Dark City in 1998, Requiem for a Dream in 2000, listen to our episode, and A Beautiful Mind in 2001, where she won an Oscar. I would say probably a makeup Oscar for Dark City, but whatever. We learned that Water was dark in the remake of Dark Water in 2005, and
Didn't realize that there was another version of that movie, by the way. Saw that movie, it's like, oh yeah, Dark Water, what a good movie. And I was like, oh, it's a remake of a Japanese movie.
I saw the remake in theaters, had the unrated DVD, and I still have not seen the original.
Okay,
Yeah.
I rented the unrated DVD at Blockbuster, and I swear there was nothing different about that cut. Like, what was unrated?
Remember
about it?
unrated cuts? Love unrated
Yes.
cuts.
Yeah. They were just like, how do we market this unrated? That's
Yeah,
not
they said
enough. What
fuck.
if we
You know,
made the
literally
cover
they
red?
said fuck like 2 times, and it's like,
Yeah, some dark
ooh,
fucking
Yeah.
water there.
dark fucking water. Smash cut.
Stamp it. Donald Pleasant as Professor John McGregor. This man has had 242 performances.
for
Prior
him.
to this, I know. Prior to this, THX 1138 and Awakened Friday in 1971. Hell yeah. Halloween in 1978 and the 5 subsequent sequels, besides the third one. Escape from New York in 1981. A TV series called Dick Turpin in 1981. Moving on, Alone in the Dark in 1982, which we will be covering later this miniseries. After this, Prince of Darkness in 1987 and Halloween 6, which people somehow like. And now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go buy Halloween Resurrection on Blu-ray. Dario Nicolati as Frau Buckner. She is like the
Yeah, baby.
Argento actress in almost like all of his movies. And Patrick Bouchard as Inspector Rudolph Geiger. He is in my beloved The Cell in 2000. And I didn't know he played Jodie Foster's ex-husband in Panic Room. And also 16 episodes of Carnival from 2003 to 2005.
That's a show I need to catch up with.
Yeah, I need to watch that.
That show has like a cult following, right? Didn't like?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There was a running joke on the Jay Baruchel sitcom Man Seeking Woman where like every time he sees his ex-girlfriend, it's like, oh, we never finished Carnival, and she's like, okay, I don't really care and everything. And he just keeps bringing it up every time he sees her.
That's funny.
Yeah. Also, when you mentioned Giallo, the Argento movie that he directed, that was literally called Giallo. It is on. If you can watch it on Tubi in Canada, it is called Color of Fear. Great title.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he also has a movie called Do You Like Hitchcock as well, which is just banger titles in his later years, let me tell you. Trivia. Jennifer Connelly had part of her finger bitten off by the chimpanzee in the final scene at the end of the film. She was rushed to the hospital and the finger was reattached. Apparently during one scene, the chimp kept turning around and Argento, not wanting to film her behind, asked Connelly to place her hand on the animal to stop her from turning. But when she attempted to do that, the chimp became enraged and bit her and then became very hostile towards Connelly for the rest of the film.
Do you think
I
Jordan Peele has seen this movie?
There's no way he hasn't.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mary Beth. Yeah.
I'm just gonna say that I don't think there's no way he hasn't.
Yeah, because of everything in Nope. Yeah.
Either that or he's a big fan of the Thor Birch Monkey Trouble movie, but yeah, I don't know.
Also, I cut you off, Kevin. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say that like I love monkeys in their various families, and I hope to hang out with one day. But goddamn, monkeys are scary.
Chimps are fucking terrifying. Fuck chimps. They're so strong and scary. Fuck that. They're terrifying, and I don't want to get anywhere near one out of respect. And
I went to Gibraltar and had monkeys hop up on my arms once, and they were cute, but it was a little. They're adorable. I love them, but
well, those are also like,
hang out with them.
Those are like small
those are like
monkeys.
the string beans.
They're much smaller than chimps. They are much
They're
smaller
not
than
like
chimps.
Chimps who are gonna like rip your limbs out of their sockets.
Yeah.
Or like the chimp in this movie that straight up just rips a door down and breaks a window, and I sure they were just like, go, and he just did it. She just did it.
There were no precautions. I mean, I didn't realize she got her finger bitten off by that chimp.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised, but holy shit, that chimp said, "Don't you fucking touch me, bitch."
She must. She hopefully she was happy that it's just like, oh, thankfully the chimp didn't have the straight razor in her hand at the time, but I just got off with a finger bitten off. But anyways. More monkey talk later, I swear. The story Jennifer tells about her mother abandoning her was actually the story of Dario Argento's own childhood. The film was inspired Dario Argento after he learned that insects are sometimes used during murder investigations. This is fucking fake. There's who lied to this man? Insects are sometimes used during murder investigations. Where? Point me to
detective.
One. It's not a thing. Argento often cites this as his personal favorite of his films. The imagery, aesthetic, and partial plot points of the film were used as the inspiration for the 1995 survival horror video game Clock Tower. In the game, you play as a young woman named Jennifer Simpson, who is trapped in a sprawling mansion estate with a psychotic, scissor-wielding, deformed boy. The character Jennifer is clearly modeled after Jennifer Connelly's appearance in this film. I have not played any of the Clock Tower games, but I want to.
Wait, that's so funny. I was just editing a piece that talked about Clock Tower today. That's so weird.
Oh, really?
What the fuck?
Wow. That's
It's
awesome.
weird. It's a weird synchronicity or whatever you want to call it.
The shots of the swarm of insects covering the external of the school and later nearly blotting out the moon were achieved through visual effects. They dumped a bunch of coffee grounds in a tank of water, filmed it, and then superimposed the new footage over the existing background shots. Hell yeah. That's how we did it back in the day. I have a worse tale of how practical effects were used back in the day coming up. A sequel is going to go into production in 2001, but it was canceled due to Argento's contract with Medusa. I assume Medusa is the production company. At one point in the film, Inga the chimpanzee finds and carries a barber's straight razor. Oh yeah, she does. Could be a possible homage to Edgar Allan Poe's The Murderers in the Rue Morgue, a horror novel in which an ape commits murder with a straight razor. What the fuck? How have I never heard of this? You're telling me that the ending of this movie, that somebody has made that into just a full-ass story. I need to read and or watch this. Originally, Argento wanted Connelly's character to be portrayed as the daughter of Al Pacino and planned to have photos and video clips of him included into the film. Pacino, however, refused to allow this, as according to Argento, he, quote, didn't appreciate telling the story of a daughter he doesn't have. Very funny. Phenomena adopts a mid-1980s trend of containing popular songs in the soundtrack. This includes heavy metal music from acts such as Iron Maiden and Motorhead, as well as goth favorites such as Sex Gang Children. That is the band's name. And
What?
I'm sorry if you're a band and there's a certain point where you go, we should call ourselves the Sex Games Children. Like the police should be able to like just storm your house like Minority Report style and just take you in. Like, I'm sorry, but
We're sending spiders into your apartment complex.
okay, yeah, the practical effects that sound like a nightmare. This is this. For the final scene where Patou is swarmed by flies, over 2 million eggs were bought and incubated in an oven. As soon as they hatched, the actor was put into makeup and wardrobe and then rushed to set. To attract the newborn flies, his clothes and covered face were coated in glucose, and the flies were released from very fine nets to swarm his body. After completing the scene, the crew opened the studio windows to release all the flies, but they inhabited the neighborhood businesses for weeks.
Oh my
It's
god.
just like a fucking nightmare. Holy crap.
Like, shit like that is a reason why CGI is a good thing, because it's just like, you just Do it in post. Instead, they were just like, we need 2 million fly eggs. How are we going to do
Well,
that?
it is also funny when you consider that there's like one firefly that's clearly animated in this movie, but then with that thing, they were like, nope, needs to be the real deal. And hey, to be fair, to the movie's credit, it looks fucking incredible.
I mean, yeah, it looks awesome. The full-length version of the film is 116 minutes long. That's called the Integral Cut. And there exists a 110-minute version, International Cut. But the version the New Line put out under the title Creepers was only 82 minutes long. Lots of trimming to basically every scene. The violence is trimmed down. Scenes like the scene with Jennifer and the doctors and the EEG machine is just cut out. And most scenes with Jennifer and Pleasance are severely trimmed. This version is out there, but I see most people say that it's like a curio and obviously not a way to watch it. I watched the 116-minute version. It was my first time watching it, and it's a great time, so.
Mm-hmm. Jennifer is the new girl in a strange school. She's taunted by her classmates, haunted by a deadly secret, and caught up in a murderous wave of terror.
When the murderer hides his victims, he likes to keep in physical contact with them.
But Jennifer's got a few million close friends.
Insects never hurt me. I love all insects.
We're in a position to do extraordinary things.
And she's going to need every one of them. Creepers.
That fly is your magic wand. Ask him to lead you where the dead bodies are hidden, and he'll lead you.
From one of the most acclaimed masters of suspense comes the chilling tale of a young girl trapped in a web of evil. Dario Argento's Creepers. It will make your skin crawl.
Initial thoughts. Mary Beth, you said that this is top tier for you, so I want to hear your thoughts.
So I watched this movie for the first time because on the podcast I host Card for Life, we were doing like a mini series on our side episode where we were going through giallo movies because I wasn't super well versed in giallo. So we were doing a little giallo series and we watched Phenomena, and I was blown away because I like giallo, I appreciate it, but like it's kind of like it all kind of becomes the same to me a little bit. Like it all kind of bleeds together a little bit. And so what I loved about this, and I love Argento's works that are not full giallo and are more supernatural are my favorites. I think they're much more experimental. That's just how I feel about it, whatever. But Phenomena to me was just like everything I wanted. It was so... And yes, I know all the complaints. It doesn't make a lot of sense. The music is weird. I don't give a fuck. It's so weird. And that's why I love it. Because I think it is so much of Argento being Argento in a way that it's like, I don't know, here's a bunch of weird things that are happening. Why? Don't worry about it. She can speak to bugs psychically and can solve crimes. And he has a razor wielding chimp. And also there's this like boy with facial deformities that lives in the basement. Yeah, it's very ableist, but you know what? Don't worry about it. It's Argento. I also really like Argento when he's more focused on these younger on these female characters. I think like I love Suspiria for that reason. I love this movie for that reason. And I just think there's something about this movie that is so monstrous feminine to the max that is just so incredible. Like a young girl who can talk to bugs. We always see this Snow White chick who can talk to birds and fuzzy animals, but this bitch is making friends with flies. Hell yeah. Like she's like conjuring flies and scaring all the bitches. And I love that for her. And all of the teachers are like, you're crazy and we hate you. And she's like, great, get in line with my dad and everyone else who hates me. And then she's just like, says, fuck school and starts like solving crimes with a monkey, with a chimp and like a paraplegic like bug scientist. It's just so ridiculous. I'm obsessed with it. Yeah. And I mean like the extremely long phone cord at one point when she's going down that hole with the phone and it just keeps going with her, and I love how long the phone cord is. And there's just I don't know, just everything about this movie I am obsessed with. I think it's incredible. I think it's my favorite Argento. I love Suspiria, but this just takes the cake for me. Maybe I'm trying to be contrarian, but I just think everything about it is so ridiculous and shouldn't work. And it probably doesn't for most people, but I just love how ridiculous it is. I've got 2 t-shirts of this movie. I want to get a tattoo of Ingo wielding the razor blade. Like, I'm telling you, like, this movie. Yeah, I have a plan for it right here. I want Ingo with, like, the straight razor, like, right here on my arm above my thing tattoo. So, like, I love this movie so much.
That's awesome.
Yes. So...
Well, great. I did not.
And again,
did not
I
know
understand if people do not feel that energy. It is not. I understand because I know that it is a weird one for Argento, and I know that a lot of people are like, I don't know about that. So I will not be upset if people do not match the energy of this. I just saying that outright. I know I am a vocal minority of lover of phenomena.
Hell yeah. Well, it was my first time watching it, and I dug the shit out of it. And then afterwards, I watched Tenebrae, and I was pretty okay-ish on it. I think what you were saying about, like, you don't like it when he goes full Giallo, but when he's weird, it's kind of cool. That one just felt like kind of a boring police detective procedural kind of at most points. And then Phenomena is just like every 5 minutes, I'm like, what the fuck are we doing? Okay, sounds great. As per usual, I'm going to go through my notes of while I was watching it. So one of the first dialogue exchanges is... her roommate that she gets in and she's getting settled in and whatnot, and they're getting in bed and whatnot, and she's just like, yeah, there's a killer going around, and she like kills girls that look exactly like us, our same age, and she's like, can we change the subject? I'm sleepy. And I was like, sure. I've never seen Every Which Way But Loose, but I've now seen Jennifer Connelly hanging out with Donald Pleasance's chimp, so I think that's better. Connelly sleepwalks once, and everybody's like, she might be schizophrenic, folks. We got to run tests.
Folks, we got a crazy bitch on our hands.
I was thinking that too. I'm like, does no one in Switzerland sleepwalk? Like, is that just?
She's like
she's
straight
American.
Up.
She's like, she sleepwalks. She must be schizophrenic.
We got to do like very weird, specific ass tests on her after one time. I love
medicalization of the female body, everybody. We love it when a little girl is, well, not little girl, but a young girl is put up and hooked up on machines, and they call her crazy because her body is unruly.
There you go. I love how Jennifer Connelly's character is named Jennifer Corvino. It's like a name that Connelly uses to check into hotels. Like, what's your name? Jennifer Jennifer Corvino. No. I feel like if there was a killer on the loose allegedly killing girls the same age as the girls here in the school, they would lock the fucking school down and not have a poetry lesson with a girl in a bootleg Bee Gees shirt. It's like, this poem kind of reminds me of Night Fever. I thought that was funny.
That was hilarious. And that's like our only line, right?
She literally is. She's just like, this reminds me of the Bee Gees. And I'm just like, what is going on? The thing with Argento's production design is like every room in his movies feels like it's like 3 stories tall and fucking massive, and I love it.
Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm. The goblin score in this goes from typical moody goblin music to like battle music from an RPG, and it's pretty dope. There's always a part in horror movies where the protagonist is like, I swear I saw somebody or something, you know, and everybody's just like, oh, it's just your imagination, you're crazy, and the audience is always like, just believe them. But with me and this and Connelly being like, I swear a firefly led me to a glove. I put on this glove and the maggots inside showed me their POV of my roommate dead. And I was just like, yeah, that's an uphill battle right there that you're going to have to battle. She brings like a good, no exaggeration, 40 billion flies onto her bullies who are like, you think you can talk to your moth, you wingding? So then they're going to have her committed. A nurse watches over her with instructions to get the headmistress when Connelly wakes up, and this nurse is the heaviest sleeper of all time. Connelly like hits a pole holding her IV. She doesn't wake up. She puts on shoes, clothes, nothing. A cuckoo clock goes off, and this woman does not wake up.
That was my favorite. Was the cuckoo clock? Also, who has a cuckoo clock in like a hospital or like a respite bed like area? It seems like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I guess so. We're going to do a good, 20 minutes on the Donald Pleasance death, followed by the jump scare where the killer's driving away and the chimp jumps onto the fucking windshield, and I fucking screamed. It's so good.
They use the chimp so well here. I just love how they use Inga. They really do use her well, in a terrifying way, but they really do use her well.
And then just the last of my notes is just, there's a fucking chimp with a straight razor, and then after that I say, maybe the best ending ever. So, that's my thoughts on Phenomena, which is a dope-ass time.
Wait, we didn't talk about the maggot pool. pool when she falls into the pool, like the nastiest pool of all time at the end of the movie.
Oh yeah.
Because
yes.
whenever I think about nasty swimming pools in horror, I think of when she falls into the maggot, this nasty pool at the end where it's like Poltergeist pool, but even worse. Like it's got all the gross bodies and the maggots everywhere, and she's just coated in whatever the fuck is in that. Like,
there's a lot to get into, believe me, and I can't wait. Bryden, initial thoughts?
Yeah, I had not seen this before. Argento is like kind of like since we last talked about him, I have seen a few more of his movies, which is nice. I think to have that bit of context. I think I did like this one. It's good. I think it's got really high highs, but I think it also is the thing where I get it might be just like it should maybe be a feature, and I hope it's not like a me problem and like not a problem with the filming or anything, but it's like the thing where like sometimes the editing feels like a little clunky and everything, where it sometimes feels like scenes are ending like a scene too like a beat too early or a beat too late, and especially like I noticed with the sound mix, might have been just the version I watched on Tubi, which like also was going occasionally alternating between English and Italian audio. I sometimes felt like the audio tracks would like they weren't always as like it would sometimes like be like, you know, you it sound like you would hear in like the whole environment you'd be hearing on the soundtrack, but then like occasionally it'd be like just like it would like then drop out to like sort of what it just sounded like kind of an isolated sound effect of like a character walking across the floor, and the way it kind of alternated between sound mixes was a little choppy for me. And I'd say like with the metal music that's on the soundtrack, I actually love the idea of using that to I love like the distinctive like tone that it's going for like music wise and everything, and I think it's like 70% of the way there for me. I feel like it's like when they drop the Motorhead song, it's like after the doctor's been killed, it's like dropped in so abruptly, like right, like just as like they're like as the ambulances are coming in and everything. It's like the second we cut to that scene, it's playing already, and I think it's like it's there like it's really effective when like Jennifer Connelly's like, you know, reacting to it and then like running sort of like it's like kind of like this speedy like angst of the song is like, you know, like underscoring her like, you know, turmoil at that point. But then like it just kind of like becomes background noise, and like it's just like playing over scene of like Patrick Bashad like going to like, you know, a mental hospital, and like it's just like it's kind of like I feel like, and especially Argento like watching like a movie like Inferno where like I feel like the music is like used really well, where he's like cutting to the music is like really cool, where like he'll be using a piece of like classical music by Verdi, and like he'll cut closer and closer on like each like, you know, sort of blare in the song to like, you know, a closer shot of like the full moon at night and everything. Like I feel like that's like the way he weaves the music like with images throughout that film is like really deliberate and like building the atmosphere in like a very very clean way. Whereas here it feels like a little, I feel like in some places it's a little choppier than usual. That's what I'd say with like the soundtrack songs. I like that they're in it, but like it's just again how they're used. But like the score I think is used like brilliantly throughout. Like I love like the opening piece of music, which is unfortunately not on Spotify, but I think is by one of the Rolling Stones guitarists. What's his name? I feel bad that I don't know the name. But it's really cool, and like it's like sort of like the sort of or it sounds like it's sort of like very plaintive, like, you know, sort of synth music, and then like there'll be like just like sort of moody echoey guitar riffs.
It's Bill Wyman.
Thank you
the
very
Rolling
much.
Stones guy.
I like to give credit where credit's due. Yeah, and like you said, the music that's the goblin music that sounds like the kind of music that you would hear like I was thinking it sounds like the kind of thing you'd hear in like an arcade game, like while you're like waiting for the menu to like to start up and everything.
Telling you.
Yeah.
It had RPG battle music.
It's so fucking cool. I would also say too with I think Connelly, I mean again, this is the other thing with like, you know, sometimes with these movies I think I just gotta like it's like I gotta just accept it's the way the movie plays. I think the performances, I think it helps that they do have kind of an alien feel because like this movie very quickly does not establish itself as realistic. That's totally fine. I'm not looking for that in this movie, but it is like a weird thing with Connelly's performance where it does feel like a pretty naturalistic teen performance. And I don't want to knock on her too badly because, you know, she was like what 15 when she made this movie, and it's like her second movie. Like whatever, it's that like I'm willing to cut someone some slack when it's that early in her career, but it's like this weird bit where like there are like these long pauses like in between like her lines and everything that like they don't feel like, and I get like, you know, like people like think about what they're saying when they're talking or anything, but like there is like kind of like these weird gaps that don't feel quite as organic when like having a conversation. And it's weird because like it kind of, I'd say it's like kind of the way the other performances are directed, and also the way like the movie's just like cut together. it's like weird when like her performance does feel like a little bit more relaxed in certain moments. It doesn't quite mix for me. I'm sorry if I'm expressing this inarticulately, but it was just like kind of a weird thing where it's like the performance and style don't quite mix for me. Like but like it's interesting to see. And yeah, you're. I will give love to Inga, the chimpanzee. I did get genuinely moved.
Damn right you will.
When Pleasance gets stabbed and like Inga like runs up and like just like like mewing and then like touching.
That was so sad.
Rubbing the stomach wound and
Yeah.
everything. Like you do get like I mean, again, it's like just like. The body language is like it's so comfortable between them and everything. I mean, I guess Pleasance and Inga cuddle on set and everything, but like it's, but you really do get like there's like a genuine emotional core in that relationship, and I found that really moving. You're right that Mary Beth to point out that the treatment of the killer reveal is ableist. I read on Wikipedia, I'd have to look into this, Dario Argento apparently was very upset about this and didn't want to work with Argento again. She did work with him later, but I'm like...
They were fucking married for a while, too.
Yeah, got divorced after this, but then worked on opera. But yeah, I just read that too, and I was like, God
And,
damn,
and
okay.
opera was like immediately after this, wasn't it?
Like 2 years?
86,
right?
87.
Yeah.
It was like
couple years
only
after
couple,
this.
Yeah.
But like it's one of those things where like I was saying it's kind of funny, just like sort of like the abrupt way that like the Connolly character like sort of abandons all of her sort of principles, where she says it's okay, you don't have to be afraid, you're not a weirdo, and then she sees his face and immediately runs away screaming. Like it's
She's like fuck that, bye. Yeah.
And it's like, but I do think there is something interesting, and this is like popped up in a couple of Argento movies too, where it's like when like I guess it's like the idea of like when you were made to feel like an outcast or treated like a monster, that can like definitely like just like make you like turn to self-hatred, and then like that like just sort of explodes and like turns into violence and everything. Like I think in spoilers for a 50-plus-year-old movie, but I think in like Bird with the Crystal Plumage, it's like a character like their like own trauma is like, and like how they've been made to feel about it, like is sort of like what leads them to like start lashing out at people violently. And then like and it's interesting how the cops are portrayed in this movie too, where like Patrick Marshall like is like not very sensitive when he's asking Dario Argento about like her attack like 15 years earlier and everything, and she's like she's clearly uncomfortable about it. And then like the moment when he gets his like handover, like yeah, he's like defending himself from like captivity, but also he is like, it like goes past the point where like he is like beating your face in, and it's like really upsetting. And it's, but like, and it's sort of an interesting thread, I think, where like I would say like the way that they sort of demonize this kid who is in the movie, who is like, who does have a facial deformity, and like make him like a crazed killer, is like, it's problematic. But I think there is also a thread of like, I mean, there is maybe there is a seed of an interesting idea, especially, and maybe that's how people are treated in real life when they're different, whether it's like just sort of like in personality or like how they're or their able-bodiedness, but and like how like this kid just sort of like, but like again, the movie is does not really like take the kid's psychology into consideration. He's just like, it's just like a shocking reveal. Yeah, I feel like I've talked about this enough. I want to hear Charlie's some thoughts on this movie, but there's a lot to get into, and I like I said, there's like some wonky stuff here, but like the stuff that's good in this movie is so good. And again, like it's like little quibbles, but like it didn't detract from like my enjoyment of the movie, and it is unpredictable in ways that I think are very enjoyable too. And that comes from the style and like just sort of the mood of it all, which I think is quite engaging. Yeah, but Charlie, please give your thoughts.
Yeah, so I actually, this was my first Argento, and I didn't.
Oh.
Yeah, I in my freshman year of Emerson College, it was, yeah, oh my God, I watched it in like October of 2009. I watched it for some movie club that a friend of mine invited me to, and I had no idea what this was. I didn't know who Dario Argento was. I was like 18, and I remember being completely baffled by it in a way where I was just like, what is this? And I definitely think the first time I watched it, I was not on its wavelength, and I found it very entertaining and hilarious, but I did not fully appreciate the artistry that went into it. So then later on in college, I watched Suspiria and was like, holy shit, this is unbelievable. I need to catch up with everything this guy's done. Caught up with Deep Red, Inferno, Opera, we've covered Sleepless on the pod, and then but I also did go back.
Caught up with Sleepless, yeah.
But I did go back and watch Phenomena again, and it was like a big learning curve for me, where I was just like, oh, like now that I know what Argento's priorities are in terms of, you know, and I never really seen a Giallo film before either, so it was like just a complete. You know, it was completely foreign to me in terms of like what I understood about filmmaking and horror and whatnot. And I definitely think as a teenager, I probably brushed it off as just something that was very silly. And now I agree with pretty much everyone here that I'd say it's in my top 3 Argentos. This is the 3rd time I've seen it. Suspiria is my number 1. I know that's a basic pick. I'd say Deep Red is number 2, and this is like right behind it. And yeah, it's funny. I didn't consider Argento dealing with otherworldly, supernatural qualities as being something different than when he's not dealing with that. And I consider myself to be a fan from almost everything I've seen, apart from Sleepless. But
you're about to sleeper cell activate Brighton if we keep shitting on Sleepless.
But I did, every time I watch this movie, I love it a little more. And also, I think the last time I watched it was on an Anchor Bay DVD, and I think it wasn't the 85-minute cut, it was the 110-minute cut. But I also rewatched it on the oh god, I should have pulled this up, but it was the Blu-ray from, they just released the 4K.
Synapse.
The Synapse Blu-ray. Yeah. A friend got it for me for a birthday present a few years ago, and I finally pulled it out to watch it for this. This movie is just so gorgeous and bizarre, and yes, wonky and a little awkward, but again, like I really vibe with everything that it's going for in terms of just how bonkers all of it is in terms of subverting genre tropes, police procedural murder mystery stuff. I mean, there is something especially I watched it that I tuned into watching it this time, where the otherness that Jennifer Connelly's character feels, I found to be very empathetic, even with, yes, of course, with every Argento film, you're gonna get some, clunky dialogue. You're gonna get some weird tonal shifts and stuff like that. But there is a sense of connection that the main characters have with bugs, animals, the world in general, that I found to be really beautiful. Even the shots of nature I found to be much more lovely and kind of even deeply moving in terms of the scope of where they are location wise and the connection that they have with the outside world when they can't connect with it internally in this very weird this weird school that they're trapped in. I mean, I laughed when it happened this time because I forgot how there's only one use of voiceover this time around, because Argento
so random.
It's very random, where it was like, and so she arrived at this Swiss school for girls, and I was kind of like, and it made me laugh, but then I kind of realized like, oh, that's the other, like that's what's unnatural to him, is like this weird society where everyone's conformed into into what is the norm, and everybody else who seeks connection outside of it is kind of either killed or shunned or judged in a weird way. Like and just on a pure sensory level, Argento just does things with color and blocking and cinematography that you will just never see before. He is obsessed with pushing his characters through plates of glass in very morbid ways, in slow motion, God, especially, that would seem really cheesy, and yet I find them like powerful in their own way. I mean, it's just the first character that we see is this, teenager who's just like, I'm a foreigner and I'm lost, and even her death, there's something very sad about it. Even though there's no background at all, that shot of the back of her head cracking through the glass and the glass shards just hitting her, I find to be very full of pathos in a weird way, even though we have no idea who this person is at all. Like, there's something about the ways in which he films violence and the ways he connects it to people who are consistently trying to escape a world in which they feel like the other, that I find to be very moving. And then on top of that, you got, as we mentioned, you got bugs attacking people, you got chimps with razor blades. Even the chimp also applies to what I'm talking about in terms of, you know, characters feeling, you know, misplaced in the world that they're trapped in. And as far as, yeah, I agree, you know, like in terms of the ableism, I'm not going to disagree at all. I will say it is so, I just in terms of when I watch an Argento film, there's such fever dreams that, again, like you said, Mary Beth, logic goes out the window. It's all rules of whatever cinema. It's all movie logic. It's all dream, you know, cinema to me. So I don't really, like, if you go in expecting any form of reality, you're definitely not going to get what you want. But if you take the film on the level that it is, you know, applying and asks you to tap into, because I do think there's a little bit with the whole genre where it asks you to, you know, just kind of put some stuff off to the side in order to appreciate what it's trying to do and say and how it's trying to entertain, then yeah, there's a lot of beauty there. So it's kind of a funhouse mirror of a movie, and I think it's kind of glorious in its own twisted, surrealist vision.
Yeah. Well, and like, obviously, you know, like you mentioned with Argento, it's, you know, it's the 80s, it's Argento, and the, you know, the ableism seems like, of course, it's not, you know, on purpose, but I think it is, you know, always interesting to see how the like disabled other body is used for horror. And again, like, it's a very common trope, but I think it's important to kind of note that, like, the killer, and it's always like the killer, we don't really learn much about him. We all know it's Dario Niccolodi's character's son, and he's a little boy, question mark? He looks like a little boy, and he's really angry, and he murders a lot. And it's got that, like, you know, Midsommar, like, advertised with the guy that had, like, he was, Ruben, I think was his name. He obviously had, like, very obvious disabilities, and they're like, look, he's so scary, and then nothing happened with him. Obviously, this one is, like, this character is the murderer, but it just feels like you reveal this, like, creepy little man for no other reason other than he's just a creepy-looking little man. And he is a creepy-looking little man. Like, he doesn't look like a person. I just think it's always very interesting. It's like, that's exactly what we went to. It's just like, he's just a creepy-looking little dude with a weird fucked-up face. Yeah. What's scarier than having a fucked-up face? And it's like, I guess. And again, it's Giallo, it's Argento in the 80s. It's just interesting to see how those things are just like, don't worry about it. It's just a fucked up little guy that she kept locked in this weird dungeon in her house.
Yeah, that's the other thing is, like, I mean, who knows if it was all of his physical, who knows if it was her just assuming the world would treat him differently. Like, we don't really know.
Oh,
it could be
and
what's happening domestically in that situation.
The beauty of Argento is, like, don't ask questions. And you're like, but you've presented a lot of things to me that I would like answers to. Like, who is this? What? She has a son? Why does she have a dungeon? Why does she have this pool in her basement? Like, why is any of this happening? And again, it's just like, don't worry about it. It's vibes forward. And you're like, all right, that's fine.
Yeah, well, you bring up Ari Aster, which I actually am not the biggest Ari Aster fan, where I feel like he consistently kind of wants to have it both ways with, don't worry about it, it's just vibes, but then also I am going to tap into, like, actual relationships, trauma, and he's got this weird thing with naked old people on top of the ableism, stuff like that, where, like, but and I know that's apples and oranges, I'm not trying to just go out on that type of thing, but I feel like Argento is fully in just, like, netherworld logic, like just it does not matter, and like, I feel like we don't get that anymore. He commits to the bit.
He commits to the bit. It's like he's fully committed to his aesthetic, and he's fully been like, you're not going to understand jack shit, and that's fine. Like, don't worry about it. We're going to throw you into this world. We're not going to understand any of the rules. Don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. all you're gonna do is vibe. And I know what you mean. Ari Aster wants you to vibe, but then also is like, what about all the lore? And you're like, don't tell me there's lore, and then don't give me the lore. Like, just throw me in the
trying
world.
To vibe.
Like,
God damn.
I'm just trying to vibe.
I don't give a shit who writes a thesis on this cult. Like, stop that. I just want
Imagine if they were like, oh, the chimp, has a precursion to like want to, kill, ever since it was a little kid. I was like, I don't care. The chimp has a straight razor. That's all I need.
There was a chimp in an Ari Aster movie. I mean,
oh, bro,
this God
stinks.
Kevin, you do joke about like the chimp like giving the explanation about like the psychology and everything, but like Bird with the Crystal Plumage literally does end with like a talk show interview where it's like with the cops saying like, well, the psychology behind this killer was blah 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 blah, and then the movie ends is like, thank goodness we're leaving Italy.
I love when movies do that, like in Psycho, at the end of Psycho, when they have the exposition dump of the guy being like, the psychology, and it's like, well, that's entirely fucked up transphobic rhetoric. But again, Alfred Hitchcock in the 60s. It's fine. It's not fine, but, whatever. But it's like that exposition dump at the end where it's like, and this is the psychological explanation for why the killer is so fucked up. And like, oh, thank you for pointing that out to me very, very explicitly. I didn't get it.
This one, Daria Nicolodi is explaining her motives while she's trying to kill Jennifer Connelly. They tried to make it a little more economical.
But I found that to be kind of charmingly funny.
I like it too.
It's incredible. It's just like one of my favorite, like, 60s to 70s like plot like 80s tropes is like having someone just give you the plot at the very end of it, like in case you didn't put it all together, here's the explanation for everything.
I also think if we're talking about chimp logic, the last time anybody's ever done...
We're talking about chimp logic? Did I step out?
No.
Can we do that? Welcome to Chimp Corner.
The last time anybody's gotten a chimp right in a movie, I think, with the slightest bit of exposition, is Being John Malkovich. Where the chimp gets that like 2-minute flashback and then gets to rescue Cameron Diaz from the cage, and then that's it. That's the last time I think these two movies are the only movies that get chimps right. I don't know about that, but
No, we're saying it right now. We're declaring it. Dunstan Jackson.
Mary Beth, when you think about this movie, what are like the top tier scenes that makes you want to go back to? You were talking about the maggot pool, which just top tier shit right there.
Maggot pool's top tier shit. Top tier nasty pool. Obviously the scene where she turns to like all the schoolgirls and all the flies come behind her and her hair is flying up. We get that one. And then it's Inga wielding the straight razor at the end, and she's just like finds a fucking straight razor in a trash can and is like the savior at the end of this movie, wielding a straight razor, and is like the reason why Jennifer Connelly lives is because this fucking chimp
Deus Ex chimp,
Nickelodeon.
And then the movie's over. Then it just ends.
That is like her and Inga walk off holding hands, and I'm just like,
yeah, it's beautiful.
It's such an iconic ending. It's so insane. Like, she's on the boat, and the guy jumps on her on the boat, and then there's a fire, and then there's bugs everywhere. And then she's on the shore, and then Dario Nicolodi shows up, and then a chimp shows up and kills her, and it's like, well, this is a great way to explain how my first semester of boarding school went to my dad.
Yeah.
This poor girl is like, Dad, get me out of here. And he's like, no, none for you. And she's like, all right.
She calls her dad's like attorney or agent. It says like, I looked up one of the lines that I wrote down. It's like, do it, Morris. I don't want to be murdered.
I don't want to get murdered. Yeah. But she orders it as if like she got the wrong thing from like Uber Eats or something. like
That's a great call.
It's like one of the few moments where like her spoiled rich kid persona really shines through, because I feel like a lot of it, she doesn't seem like a spoiled rich kid, but then it's like, Daddy, like, how dare you not let me have my money to leave? And it's like, okay, here's the privileged kid part of this movie coming in.
But she asks, like, what holiday? He's away on holiday. What holiday is it? Passover. As if, like, that's like the most foreign concept in the world. Yeah.
Also, I love in giallo films, I've just noticed I love the colors of the phone whenever they're on the phone with somebody. I think this one it's like it's a bold orange or something. Which,
look, if Dario Argento's going to do one thing right, it's the fucking production design, and we're going to make everything look really pretty and really weird.
Well, he turns me into like it. I mean this in the best way possible. I love this about his films. He kind of turns me into a baby in a weird way, where I'm just like sensory feelings, like
you are like a little baby.
like it kind of makes me feel intoxicated a little bit, where it's just big, bold images, intense, intoxicating sound design, regardless of what tone it's going for. It just makes me feel overwhelmed in a way that it's just like any adult's sense of logistical comprehension. It's just like get rid of that. Like why like just appreciate it, just ride the wave of surrealism here. And I kind of love that.
Yeah,
the scene that I'm gonna be thinking of is whenever she sleepwalks for the first time and sees this other girl being chased by literally just a spear. We do not see a guy, we just see a spear get attached, and then that's not even the first window crashing, but she goes through the window and then the spear goes through her mouth, and it's just the sleep and dream logic of all of that is just really awesome.
Yeah. It kind of made me think of, I don't know if anyone else has seen this film, and obviously this film doesn't show that type of violence to such a graphic degree, but it kind of made me think of Peeping Tom with the voyeuristic element of that weapon.
I can see that.
And you get those classic shots too of like the glimmer, like the little like shining like glisten of like the blade and everything, when it's like sticking out and everything. It's just like giving it like an extra bit of texture. Yeah.
Oh, I love that every weapon that's ever been used, even if you've seen that weapon be used before, looks as if he just, like, it's brand spanking new.
Yes.
Like, it looks like he has taken utmost care of it. Yeah.
I mean, you got to.
Yeah.
It's got a shimmer in the camera.
It's
That's
polished.
what he's thinking about.
Yeah.
Well, any other scenes we want to grab onto or final thoughts?
I guess, Mary Beth, you brought up the scene where, like, all the schoolgirls, like, taunt her and stuff like that, and then she kind of, like, you can basically see them being like, okay, the fan, add the fan, so her hair is blowing behind her, but she is crying and just kind of goes, I love all of you, and, like, I know...
It's so good!
It's so good, and I know that can be written off as silly or clunky or whatever, but it did make me think about how... that is, like, the best response to have, like, if you're an empathetic human being to anybody.
But just, like, the beauty of, like, this young, beautiful girl being, like, the queen of pestilence, essentially. Like, she is queen of the fucking bugs. She can bring this plague of flies. She can talk to the maggots. Like, it's just, I mentioned it before, but it's just so anti what we think. We think of young girls and, like, their magical abilities. And I love it. He was like, what's the weirdest thing like a girl could be able to communicate with? And it's bugs. And I love that in terms of just seeing, I feel like bugs are so, in our heads, like, both simple and complicated. Like, mammals, it's a little bit easier to be like, oh, yeah, okay. Like, you're kind of like, we got, like, similar shit going on. Like, we have a similar nervous system. Bugs, it's like, you're aliens. If you think about bugs too hard, which I honestly do, they're kind of fucking freaky. The way their bodies work and the way their anatomy works is bizarre. It's very weird. It freaks me out. And they tap into that with her being like, oh, the thing you're supposed to be scared of? Those are her buddies. And I just think it's so cool. And I want to remake this movie, but I want a female filmmaker to, like, do, like, a reprisal of this movie. I think it'd be so cool. I would love to, like, if I could remake a movie, I think it would be this movie.
Damn.
Like, if I could do anyone, I think it would be this one.
What kind of music would you have on the soundtrack? I mean, too, like, would you want, like, the heavy metal music like in this, or would you want, like, sort of, like, maybe a little bit more updated or a different genre?
That's a good question. I think you kind of have to keep the heavy metal, but I want, like, female, like, heavy metal singers, like Spirit Box and stuff like that, or like Lingua Ignota, kind of like screaming.
Let's go.
I would love to have, like, I think I would still keep that, but I would have it more be like femme focused music. But I think I'd still have to keep that, though. I think that's such an important part of the ethos of Phenomena. You have to keep the weird music.
Yeah.
I was just going to cut in and say that the tagline for this movie, if we don't know, is Jennifer has a few million close friends and she's going to need them, and it's underlined all. Hell yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
So good. Ugh.
Did you like...
What were you going to say?
Maybe real quick, and maybe we could cut this out if it doesn't end well, but like I was just curious what you thought of the Suspiria remake, because that Tom York score is also much different than the Goblin score, and obviously the cinematography is different.
And it's so funny. So last Halloween, we went to our close friend's house who loves Suspiria, and I showed... So me and this guy Nick had seen both of them. His wife hadn't seen the new one, and my husband hadn't seen either of them. And so we were showing everyone Suspiria, and so we watched them back to back. I do love the Suspiria remake, I will say. Yeah. I think I love it. I think Tom York's score rules. Because the vibe is so different from the original, it made sense. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't trying to be that, like, fever dreamy weird. It was trying to be a little bit more naturalistic. So the score made a bit more sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Suspirium, you were right.
But I'd keep the dream logic. I wouldn't try to make any explanation. I'd be like, nah, fuck it. Like, we're just going dream logic. We don't need explanations. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Wrapping up, what else we got? What final thoughts on Phenomenon?
Kevin and Charlie, how did you think this movie's depiction of boarding school compared to Lost and Delirious' depiction of boarding school?
Oh my god!
Sorry, that's only for us three. But, I just wanted to.
I haven't been to boarding school. I went to a very, very privileged, like, public school.
This seemed more logical than actually in Lost and Delirious, if I'm going to be honest. Actually. Yeah.
Well, there were bugs in this one as opposed to hawks.
Yeah. For all the 5 people that have seen that movie.
Yeah, Piper Parabo's best friend was a hawk. Jennifer Connelly's befriended by millions and millions of insects. I think Jennifer Connelly won. Oh, she definitely won.
Yeah. I mean, she's still alive at the end of it. Okay, we're wrapping up. I will say that there's a fantastic shot whenever... Well, the entire scene where she has the fly, the big ass fly that Donald Pleasance gives her, and she's on the bus, and I don't know why the scene really exists. It's like 5 minutes of her on the bus, and she opens a window, and this old lady's just like, "Yo, shut the goddamn window!" And she's like, "I will not." And then the old lady gets pissed and moves. And then when Connolly gets off the bus, you see while the bus is going away, you see the old lady go by and shut the window.
Yes, that's really
And then her following the fly through that like vast just all of this tall ass grass, and it looks gorgeous.
Oh my god, I would love to just bring a book into that field and hang out there all day. Even set up camp there, maybe. Like,
it's so pretty.
Yeah. What were you gonna say, Brian?
Yeah, no, I did like that detail. If you see the woman close to the window, it's also kind of a weird scene where you think like it's gonna be like one of the scenes where she's like, well, maybe this guy in the trench coat and the hat is the killer and everything, but then it just like kind of just goes to the open house. That was also the other thing with the open house. Like, I thought, I guess it's just a red herring. There's like a weird transition too, where like Patrick Bouchard shows up and says like, "Oh, I am the inspector," and then like he like brings his badge to like right up to the frame, and then like the scene just cuts. I'm like, did he just like kill that guy? Like, is he the killer? And it was really kind of one of those things where I'm like, this movie's keeping me on my toes. I don't know what's happening. But yeah, no, I don't know if I really have final thoughts, but I like this movie. It's a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to watching more Argento from this point on. Who knows? Maybe we'll do another mini major where I have to talk about one of his movies. But yeah.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Almost Major. Please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. Please follow the pod on Twitter at Almost Major to keep up to date with what movies we will be covering in the future. Myself, I can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at KevBonesy. Bryden can be found on Twitter at Bryden Doyle and on Letterboxd at JDoyle. Charlie can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at CTNash91. Once again, thank you for listening.